Hello, I am Raul Ramirez of the Catch Wrestling Alliance, where we keep real wrestling alive. And actually, another one of our goals, besides preserving catch wrestling, is to help you improve as a grappler. So, we want to help you to elevate your grappling. That's why we have the online CWA Academy course available for everybody. So I just wanted to let people know it's not just about like living in the past and trying to share old pictures, old black and white pictures, and all that. Because it seems like that's kind of what actually when a lot of people really respond to that, they really like the heyday of catch wrestling. So um, you'll see a lot of likes on like these really old, black and white wrestling pictures, which are great. I love them too. But we want to try to make sure that we take catch wrestling into the future as well and not make it just be pro wrestling, which is kind of funny. I'm wearing a pro wrestling t-shirt. I don't know if you're listening to the audio, you might not see it, but you might have seen this shirt. So if you're watching the video on our Twitch or our YouTube, this is actually a drawing that was done by the late great Billy Robinson. He drew this, and then when he was teaching at the Snake Pit Japan, uh, and so then they put it on a shirt. So I happen to have one. So so uh, it doesn't mean I'm all into like pro wrestling or that I think that pro wrestling is catch wrestling and all that. It's those of you who have watched our streams or even seen our social media. We're really trying to dispel that myth that if you're a pro wrestler that you automatically are a catch wrestler. It's just not true. And catch wrestling is the source, or it was like the original professional version of wrestling until uh, the the whole thing changed, right? And you had a more performance based or some predetermined matches going on, like you then that evolved to what we have today, right? So, with that being said, it's still a cool shirt. It was really nice to spend time with Billy Robinson in Arkansas. I was wearing this, and he was really happy that I wore it. And it's actually a really cool drawing that he did himself. Right, that's why for those of you who can see, it has a BR there, so he put his initials there. All right. With that being said, actually, we have some more announcements, which I think people might like. Hopefully, we're gonna be putting out a new video course coming out soon. I think a lot of people have been asking about like the main dominant style of grappling, right? It's jiu-jitsu, and no-gi jiu-jitsu in particular is gaining popularity, and so people ask about like how to use catch wrestling principles to compete against nogi. So we're going to be putting out a course. Actually, it's going to be several courses, but we're going to be putting out the first one very soon, probably, hopefully by the end of, actually not the end of this week, because it's already the end of the week almost. So hopefully next week we'll be working on a pressure pass system, the first volume. So we're going to be working on catch wrestling ways to attack close guard. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be available on our website as well. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to what we're talking about. Grappling and MMA, right? So we just a lot of people also have been sending this video to me, or at least like wanting me to watch the Juliana Pena fight, um, and people were talking about um, like how the grappling exchanges took, like went, or how they developed and all that. But yeah, one of the things that we want to kind of like point out, and I found some really cool clips from an interview. So hopefully, I'm going to show you. They're really short, so hopefully they don't get this video taken down from YouTube. They're from Ariel Helwani. He interviewed Juliana Pena after the fight, and she raised some pretty good points. So hopefully by sharing, and this is the I'm sharing the video that he shared on his social media. So hopefully He's cool with us sharing it here on our live stream, uh, because UFC is not so kind, right? So quite often when I share even some short clips of UFC stuff, UFC tries to take down the video. So let's try to anyway. So hopefully he has no problem. But there's a couple points that the reason why people were kind of pointing this match out to me in particular is because a couple techniques. It looked like Juliana Pena won the fight by like neck crank, and the other thing that Juliana Pena that she also talks about, especially here in the interview, the post fight interview with Ariel Helwani, is the straight armbar attempt. And this is another thing. This that will lead me into like talking about grappling in MMA in particular, and how ultimately, like people, because a lot of these techniques like straight arm bars and neck cranks and stuff aren't taught or practiced so much in no-gi jiu-jitsu and gi jiu-jitsu, so then people are fighting the way they're training, and so that's why you don't see these types of techniques happening so often, right, in other scenarios, so whether it be MMA or no-gi. All right, so let's go ahead and pull up the first clip. So this one should be Juliana Pena talking about the straight arm bar.
Yes, it was in the first round. It looked to the naked eye. I mean, these are $1 million cameras and they're great, but you would think that they would get the shot of like, I'm about to snap this girl's arm. I'm about to have the first ever victory by straight arm lock. You know, that's what was playing in my mind. Like, I was like, man, it probably looks like people probably are like, oh, she's going to choke her. But I'm like, dude, her arm is going to snap in half. I have her arm. Like, I wish that they could see that. Like I don't know if they saw it or not. I actually haven't seen the full fight yet, but I had her in trouble in round one. And I knew that that's the moment that I was like, man, like if this is how our grappling exchanges are going to be, I could do this all night long. And especially just the amount that she was breathing, you know, you could hear her like, and I'm just cool.
Chilling. How deep was that choke? Because honestly, like when it happened, I was like, "Oh wow, it's over." I like you can't even see. It didn't even look like it was locked in. I know the hooks weren't in.
All right, so good thing it cuts off right there. All right, so let's go and talk about that straight arm bar first. So the straight arm bar, or she calls it a straight arm lock, totally viable technique, and actually it should be seen more in no-gi and MMA. It's such a great submission that you can get on a lot of people, because people, again, so it's like people are fighting the way they train, and even no-gi, how no-gi's been kind of changing the jiu-jitsu culture a little bit with their they've been really trying to promote leg locks and all that. So the whole leg lock game in no-gi's been shifting the culture of Brazilian jiu-jitsu just in general. So but there's things that still haven't kind of like become part of that culture, and so straight arm bars and neck cranks are still some of them you still kind of see people doing neck cranks, or say like even, but then like people who aren't necessarily jiu-jitsu based doing neck cranks a little bit more, like that famous instance with Khabib versus Conor McGregor, and I believe that neck crank probably wasn't even that painful, because people can do it better, and that's kind of one of my points, so we kind of talk about it later. But let's go ahead and go back to the straight armbar. Totally viable. And then again, the culture of jiu-jitsu is where it's like someone takes your back, and so you're going to be seeing, or you should be, if you watch MMA or if you watch grappling, you'll often hear like a commentator talking about like, oh, as soon as someone gets their back of one opponent, then it's on, we're nearing the end of the match, because once the back is taken, then the rear naked choke is inevitable, almost inevitable, right? But that's is just not true, especially since people are learning chokes from, say, like the white belt stage. You'll be you should be learning defense at the same time as well, right? So it shouldn't be that easy. And again, like I want to point to the one championship match that occurred. It was Gary Tonin versus this karate black belt. I'm sorry, I do not remember the karate black belt's name. He was a karate black belt from Japan, and so this guy had basically, we had like a high level grappler, world class grappler, unable to submit a low level grappler who's just primarily a striker, right? So, and he took the back. He did all these other submission attempts, and the Japanese fighter was able to defend and escape from everyone. Right. So taking someone's back is not the end all be all of a grappling match or even an MMA match, because we've seen, the highest level competitors unable to submit their opponents. Right. So there, right? But there's these other cool techniques that you can do, especially if someone takes your back. You can be fighting back with submission attempts. And a lot of times you can get the submission, but again, it just takes practice. And I guess my point is, you fight the way you train. So if you're not doing these types of things, then you're not going to be doing them during a match, right? Unless, I don't know, you do this Hail Mary type thing and then it just works out for you. But Juliana Pena went for the straight arm bar. She calls it a straight arm lock. I call it a straight arm bar. Same thing. And it was successful, right? Definitely didn't allow the choke to happen, the rear naked choke to happen. It didn't finish the match, but it can. So with practice, you totally can do that, even if someone has taken your back. Okay, so with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the chokes.
Yes, it would.
Sorry, not that clip. Okay, so here's the later clip where they talk about the neck crank. Even Juliana Pena talks about it as a choke. I wish I could. I mean, I did take a still image of the match, but just the way the match, like where the camera was, you can kind of see it looked like she was trying to set up, or look more closer to what we call a face lock, and it's just unfortunate that she calls it a choke. But anyway, here we go.
Actually in tight? Were you surprised that she tapped when she did?
Yeah, Rick and I have been working this choke for a while, and it was the same pretty much variation choke that I got with Sarah McMahon. It was absolutely tight, and she had no choice but to tap. People want to say that she quit. She didn't quit. She was getting choked. She had no choice but to tap. I would have broke her neck. So she tapped because she had.
I would have broke her neck, right? So that's really a sign of neck crank, right? So of the technique itself being more of a crank, right, than a choke, right? So, and again, I think it just shows more of the whole was the culture, being choke oriented. So once you're in that position, so the rear naked choke position, like that figure 4 arm position, it can be what we call in catch wrestling a face lock, right? So you don't have to have the arm under the chin, and the angle of the actual UFC match isn't the best, but I found one still image that it looked as though Juliana Pena's arm wasn't underneath the chin of Nunes, and so if it never got under the chin completely, then of course it would be completely a neck crank, right? So so whether or not she was Nunes was being choked or not, the main thing, and that Pena points out, is that if she didn't tap, her neck would be broken, or could be broken. It's basically really uncomfortable. It was setting up a face lock, and yeah, again, people can tap. How like Ariel Hawani points out, it's like they don't necessarily have to have the hooks in, because it should be painful, and it should make your opponent scared or fear that their neck could be injured, right? So it's not so much they're going to be passing out due to lack of oxygen or whatever. It should be like fear inducing, right? If not potentially dangerous, or potentially with injury inducing, right? So Let's go ahead and watch that one clip again where she describes it, because talking about pain, then that's more of a crank.
Actually in tight? Were you surprised that she tapped when she did?
Yeah, Rick and I have been working this choke for a while, and it was the same pretty much variation choke that I got with Sarah McMahon. It was absolutely tight, and she had no choice but to tap. People want to say that she quit. She didn't quit. She was getting choked. She had no choice but to tap. It would have broke her neck. So she tapped because she had no choice.
So again, for me, that would be the sign of a crank, but also, I guess there is that thing. Even what Chael Sonnen put out some video that I didn't watch the whole thing, but I just saw something where he talks. I think his main point is that Pena quit or whatever. But there's this other. I want to give a shout out to the other podcast called Southpaw, and they were discussing this match as well, and they were saying that a lot of times Nunes can overwhelm her opponents. So those opponents who are able to make the fight last longer, you start seeing a significant reduction in Nunes's ability or strength and speed and stamina. Even though Nunes will still win, she's shown that maybe she really puts a lot into the first round. And so with this fight, it doesn't necessarily mean that she quit. It could very well mean that she submitted to a real technique, a real neck crank. All right. So I'm going to kind of, be more on the side of Pena here, where to me, at least on the angle that the camera was at for that match, it definitely seems a little bit more like that face lock, or that she was setting up what I guess she didn't really realize that she was setting up a face lock. She's calling it a choke, and she's whatever, a choke variation. So it could be just like this. It's just what people relate to when people are in that position. So it could be something like that. But hopefully we can kind of change the culture even. So I think, say, with us doing our work here in Catch Wrestling Alliance and all that, and people getting more into catch wrestling, hopefully we can kind of get people to recognize the validity of the neck crank, and understand how to do neck cranks even better, because that's the other point where I kind of mentioned earlier about the Khabib and Conor McGregor match. So Conor McGregor tapped out really quick to a not well done neck crank. No offense, I'm sure maybe I would submit to, but I don't think it didn't look so technically perfect the way Khabib did that neck crank to Conor. So I think it goes to I've seen kind of similar instances where someone does kind of a weak neck crank and then the other person submits. I think that also shows that when you put on at least some amount of neck crank action, right, then a lot of people will tap because they start fearing for neck injuries and all that. So they might, so people even at the highest levels have tapped early, and I think it shows their lack of awareness or experience with these types of techniques. And that makes me think of this other point that I wanted to bring up. So it was actually a few years ago. There was some other MMA fight where I think a neck crank was involved, right? But some MMA fanboy was trying to say oh, all MMA fighters know about neck cranks and this and that, but this person was just a fanboy, because, at least in my mind, because you're just not seeing neck cranks happening with any regularity or any frequency, or when at least from my eye or my point of view. So it's completely my opinion, right? So you can have your own opinion or whatever, but a lot of times these neck cranks aren't applied very well. And so I also have experience, again, I teach at an MMA school. I also roll at a jiu-jitsu gym, and when people are calling things cranks and stuff like that, they're usually pretty weak cranks that people are submitting to. But they could be better. They could be more painful and more fear-inducing, right? All right. So I think those are my main points. And so then, yeah, I would kind of like if someone like when a fanboy is like, oh, they know about it. It's like, well, they might have heard about it, but it's not necessarily something that they do. It's not necessarily the way they train. We're not seeing them done very well when they are applied in matches and stuff. So no, I just don't agree because again, you're it's not like the main thing that's like neck cranks are still like illegal techniques in many grappling competitions and whatnot. So people aren't going to be training for them. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to some of your comments. Christian Barrero. Hello. Catch wrestling is awesome. I agree, Christian. Pro wrestling is fake, and I am a fan of pro wrestling. Yeah, there's some people like, well, I've had this person on my, on this channel a few times. Jennifer Thomas, one of my good friends. She is a pro wrestler, and she is one of the most fantastic pro wrestlers I've ever seen. And I've seen her do some matches, and it's just amazing. Like her skill is amazing. Better than a lot of other pro wrestlers that I've met. And so she ends up helping these other people to improve. So it's pretty awesome. So there's a lot of cool things that can happen, or at least a lot of, it can still be exciting, the pro wrestling match. Hala. Hi, Coach Raul. Hello, Hala. Nice to catch you here. It's good to be caught. Good to be. Hala, I wanted to get your take on this. So hopefully this was a good take, or at least let me know what you think. Hala, again, I thought she neck cranked her too. Okay, yeah, so I'm glad Hala and I agree. So I got some validation here, right? Yeah, it was at least from the video, the angle and all that wasn't necessarily the best, but it does look like Pena was applying a face lock, and apparently, I guess she just doesn't know that name or the name of that, so she calls it a choke variation. So whatever, or maybe they have some name in their gym and they just don't want to share whatever their code word for that technique or whatever. So that's totally fine, because I know at the MMA gym that I teach at, I guess apparently they have some code words for certain techniques, so that during a match, the coach can yell out certain things, and then the other side wouldn't know what they're talking about. Same thing happened like in baseball. That's a big example where they have all these different gestures and whatever code words and all that. So same thing can happen in MMA, but ultimately catch wrestling is called a face lock, right? So let me know if you have any other questions. I know this was kind of like a not the usual time that we've been chatting, but so for those of you who are here, feel free to ask your questions or make your comments. So if you think that all MMA fighters know neck cranks and all that, feel free to show your ignorance. I'm just kidding. Now it's just weird. Some people, they really defend like these points that they can't quite prove, especially when they're not experts and stuff. So that's kind of like what we have to deal with. So speaking of experts, why am I an expert? Right? Well, the reason why I'm talking, or at least the reason why I feel like there's many reasons why like we're here, because ultimately we're trying to preserve the art of catch wrestling. It because of things like pro wrestling, Olympic freestyle, even folk style and stuff. they've changed the rules, right? And they've evolved so far away from the original source, the original style that they stemmed from. So we're really trying to preserve the original version, right? So I've trained, several years with, again, like say Billy Robinson, the descent or the lineage holder of. So Billy Robinson isn't, but Roy Wood, the Coach Roy Wood at Snake Pit Wigan, which is like the real home of authentic catch wrestling. And so I've trained there several years. I competed for them at their events. So that's why I'm talking. Also, I have the highest certification from American Hook Wrestling. So that's my good buddy John Strickland. So you've probably seen him on our YouTube channel. Share videos with him. Because of COVID, we couldn't really travel so much. So we probably would have had John come back to LA to visit. But yeah, the travel stuff is difficult, at least at the moment. Hopefully things start clearing up, once people start acting better, where, they aren't filling up hospitals and stuff. Yeah. So anyway, I got a lot of experience from the most authentic sources. So that's why I'm talking, and that's why I feel very passionate about the preservation of the real thing. All right, let's get back to some of your questions. Hala, when is a good time for kids to start learning catch wrestling? Well, we've been talking about neck cranks for a little while here, so it is a little dangerous. So you definitely want to have them start off with, I would say, like catch wrestling fundamentals, or the closest sport where they can get experience with other kids. You might have a class with several kids, would probably be folk style. I would definitely prefer, or I would recommend folk style over freestyle wrestling. But chances are, in the United States, they would be mixing the folk style and freestyle in their classes. If you're not in the United States, then it would only be freestyle. So the kids, say if you wanted to start the kids in any type of amateur wrestling, you can, because at least they can be learning some wrestling fundamentals. They wouldn't necessarily be catch wrestling fundamentals. They might be very similar, but they wouldn't be so cognizant of like the when they are making themselves vulnerable to submission holds, right? So that would just be the only concern. So, but yeah, go ahead and get them started with an amateur style of wrestling. It will only be beneficial. I know it will teach them kind of like to be a little bit tougher and to fight through some of the painful submissions and stuff like that. But then later, once they get a little bit older and stuff, then they can start learning more of the pain compliant stuff. And so there. So I think that's my thing. Just if they can tolerate it, or if they enjoy doing the fundamentals, let's go ahead and have them do that. Jonathan Jimenez, show the shirt more. I can't see it. So I'll go ahead and show this. So double arm suplex. It was a drawing done by one of my coaches, the late Billy Robinson, right? So it says pro wrestling on top, and on the back, actually, it says Snake Pit Japan. Let me see. Oh yeah, so Jonathan Jimenez, I think, is responding to Hala's question about when kids can start learning catch. Yeah, that's another thing. So his response is when they are good at listening. So yeah, that would be the thing, right? If they have the desire to do it, then yeah, go ahead and put them in it. Otherwise, they'll just like not want to go to class, and they won't want to train, and so it'll become like torture for them. Oh yeah, so Jonathan clarifies himself that later, right? So he says, whatever age that may be, if your child is good with listening and paying attention, then by all means. Yeah, because you could have some, like a kid who's really interested in doing something, and like, so then they might do better in a class even than older kids, because the older kids might not be so interested. So that can be a problem. Like, basically the desire, like if you want to be doing it, then you'll do it. And you'd probably make the coach happy, and they might let you in. Like, say if your kid is really young and maybe a year younger than the minimum age, but if they have that strong desire to do it, then maybe the school or the instructor might make an exception and let the kid in, because that does happen. That does happen. Jonathan Jimenez. Also, I hope everyone has a nice Catchmas, by the way. Very Merry Catchmas to you. Shinhee E, all the way from New Zealand. Can you neck crank with hammerlock like a double submission? Yes, that's a really great submission. So it's called the crossface chicken wing. So that wouldn't necessarily be face lock, but it would be a neck crank with one arm behind the back, and then you turn their head and you join hands behind the scapula, like the shoulder area. So that is called a crossface chicken wing. It is a amazing submission, and it was actually, I heard Coach Roy Wood say that was his favorite position, and there's actually a picture of him doing it. They should be floating around, definitely on the Snake Pit Wigan social media, or I'm sure we've shared it before on our Instagram and stuff. So go ahead and check it out. It's really cool, and it's a amazing submission. It takes practice to get into it and all that. Shinhee, can you please make a demo video of this? Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah, we'll work on that. Jonathan Jimenez. Wait, Billy Robinson could draw? Well, apparently, might as well show the shirt. So here it is. It says pro wrestling on top. It shows a picture of Billy Robinson's favorite pro wrestling technique, the double arm suplex. Right? So if someone kind of shoots, well, one of the ways you can kind of do it is like, if someone does shoot in, you can underhook them while they're kind of shooting in, right? Lock your hands, bridge, throw them over you. Then you can set up a pin that way if you follow through with them. So yeah, totally viable technique. Totally, it can be used in catch wrestling situations. Yeah, but the shirt says pro wrestling, so but it's definitely one of his favorite moves. And going back to Shinhee E's comment, so that crossface chicken wing is one of Coach Roy Wood's favorite moves as well. Jonathan Jimenez, that man was something else. Well, Jonathan Jimenez is actually something else as well. For those, so earlier I mentioned that probably by next week we will be putting out the first volume of what I'm calling a pressure pass system. And so Jonathan Jimenez was kind enough to help out with that filming. So you'll be seeing him in those videos, in that video course. So it'll be one scenario against close guard, and it will be several ways to pass guard. We show also several submissions, including leg locks. So you don't necessarily pass the guard with the leg lock, right? But at least you can break the leg. Not, well, yeah, you can totally break the leg, but you can break the close guard and set up a submission, foot locks and leg locks and stuff. So we show several ones of those, toe holds, and but also passing the guard as well, pinning as well. Oh, a cat broke into my house. Just kidding. Those of you who are watching the video, you might be able to see a cat walking behind me. That's my cat. Jonathan Jimenez did the Fujiwara cradle today in Nogi class, and it worked, but I got to clean it up though. Yeah, all these techniques, again, it is truly making sure that you got a good coach, but again, it's then just working them over and over again against different partners, different scenarios. And so in that course, we show a variety of scenarios, and then we also show, like, say if you don't quite have it yet, like you don't have the technique done very well, and the most common way someone will try to counter you or escape from it, we show you how to counter their counter, right? So it should be a pretty good course. So hopefully you like it. Actually, I think it's a pretty great course. All these techniques really work. I use them all the time, except the ones where I counter someone's counter to my move, because I always do every move perfect. No, just kidding. Shinhei, will we see catch wrestlers and ABCs? What are the chances? Yeah, I mean, just as long as we keep training more people, then we'll be seeing more, definitely. Hala, do you teach cradles to Coach Raul? Yes, actually, this pressure pass system is cradle. It's the first. So I want to call it volume 1 because everyone seems to be really interested in, uh, competing against Nogi. So let's go ahead and work on pressure passing, because it's so good. I do these types of pressure passes all the time. I want to show kind of what works best for me, at least from a catch wrestling perspective. I'm going to kind of show some of the stuff that is being done in modern Nogi as well, something like a Sao Paulo pass or whatever, type of pressure pass done in Nogi. But I like doing other things. I don't know. I'd probably do a different variation to the Sao Paulo pass. Um, so look for that in the future volumes to our pressure passing system. Hala, apparently they are the new thing. Yeah, even for a few years now, you've been seeing a little bit more, like, I guess, like recognition of these types of things, like the cradle. And so you have a few people putting out their cradle jiu-jitsu DVD or whatever, but um, yeah, again, it's not like the catch wrestling based. So there's still some, yeah, whatever. So this first one's going to be cradle based. Shinhei, cradle to Dars or anaconda choke is a good option. So you mentioned choke. We're going to do cradle to neck crank, because we're catch wrestlers, right? So that'll be one of the techniques you'll see. So there's so many different things you can do from the cradle, but we're going to be doing a cradle technique from closed guard. So that's where we're going to start. So that's going to be the first series. So it should be out. Hopefully, I'm gonna try to finish it. It's just there's a lot of videos, so a lot of different lessons in there. So I'm editing them myself, and I'm almost done. It's got like maybe 3 or 4 left. It's a lot of lessons, so it should be a really good course, because it should give you a lot of variations on how to break the close guard using a cradle, and how to set up passing and submissions. So there's a lot of techniques in there. Hala, awesome, cool. Jonathan Jimenez, on the first day of Catchmas, my partner gave to me. The partner gave to you the Catch Wrestling Alliance pressure pass system. Shinhei, can you get to the leg lock from cradle, heel hook, toe hold? Yep. You can even get a toe hold in the cradle. So that's one of the techniques that we show. But then we show how to get an Achilles lock, and also how to get the heel hook as well. Hala, are you going to be teaching escapes anytime in the future? So escapes from what position? Like, what do you mean? Like if someone pins you, or what in particular? So please comment, and then I'll make a note of what kind of escape you mean. Hurry, Hala. Just kidding. Okay. Okay, all positions. Okay, but anyone in particular that you're most concerned about? You got 2 seconds to post. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, you're not posting. What's up? Oh, submission escapes. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Jonathan Jimenez. Fuji cradle. The Fujiwara cradle is a magical technique sent from the North Pole. Every good boy and girl for every good boy and girl. uh, I agree, Jonathan. So Hala, any submission in particular that you're struggling with? So yeah, I think Jonathan Jimenez brought up a good point earlier. So he's kind of newer to this kind of system that we're working on, and I think if was it last week? I think he said that in his no-gi class, he was trying to do the technique, but it wasn't quite working. And then during this live stream, he said that this morning in no-gi he was able to get it. So again, just takes practice. And if it doesn't work out when you try it against a stranger, don't worry about it. You still you need practice. You just got to keep going, keep doing it. Hala, chin strap from inside the closed guard. Okay, yeah, I guess we can try to do something where, like, if you have someone who's really aggressive inside closed guard, or people doing like Barambolo stuff. Yeah, I think that's something we can talk about. Because actually, yeah, I roll against people who do these types of things all the time. And there's a lot of cool things you can be doing to counter a lot of their rolls. A lot of people who are pretty aggressive inside guard. There's a lot of cool things you can do using catch wrestling principles. Hala, on arm, chin strap, neck crank from inside the closed guard. All right. Okay, I'll see what we can do. All right. Yeah, so we'll take note of that and then see if we can't put out something about that. But yeah, we'll also, was it Shinhei mentioned about the crossface chicken wing, also a great, brilliant technique. Yeah, so for a lot of these things, we do have. Oh, actually, also, I wanted to mention. So if you join our YouTube channel, you can get access to a lot more videos. And one thing that's really cool. So hopefully, whoever's stuck around or whoever's joining now, they get to hear this, right? So I found a hard drive that the videographer that we use for our events in Singapore, he gave to me, and I thought it just had the matches that we had already put out years ago on our YouTube channel. But it turns out he was filming during some seminars that we did in Singapore. So I'm going to look through that video footage, and then we'll probably just be putting that up for the people who join our membership, or basically people who become members of our YouTube channel. So check that out. We have different tiers and stuff like that. So the middle tier would give you access to all those videos. So I already found some, been putting up stuff more frequently, and found a pretty cool sparring match that I put up there this past week and stuff. So got a lot of good stuff up there. And so I've been wanting to put up seminar footage. So apparently we got some really good quality seminar footage. So hopefully, just you're free to watch it. Just give back, right, by becoming a member. We're in the giving season, right? So please, it really helps. Okay, Shinhei, step over toe hold to neck crank. This catch move, right? Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it's totally. You don't see that in nogi. Hala, which days times do you teach at Fight Science, and how much is the drop-in fee? Right now at Fight Science, I teach on Thursday nights. So please come in, and then make sure you tell them that you're there to take the class and not to join their gym. Unless you want to join their gym, it's totally fine. All right. So for those of you who are just dropping in right now, we were talking about basically the state of grappling in MMA. I think it really follows the overall culture of no-gi jiu-jitsu, or just jiu-jitsu still. And so since like say even leg locks and stuff are they're big in no-gi, but they're not as big in gi yet. So you aren't like seeing, you're not seeing leg locks so much in MMA. You do see them from time to time, and you see some highlight stuff that circulates the internet, where people get some leg lock submissions during an MMA match, but it's not necessarily the main thing. And then, but with regards to the fight, Pena versus Nunes, you just don't see the neck cranks very often. So I think it's like even less frequently. Or actually, maybe, well, it depends. I don't have the actual numbers to back that up, but I mean, so, but at least a leg lock, it'll still be called a leg lock. But in the case of Juliana Pena, she's even calling her neck crank attempt a choke variation. All right. So I think just like the culture is just so dominated by jiu-jitsu. So so that's that. We'll go ahead and play the video of the interview one more time.
Yes, it was in the first round. It looked to the naked eye. I mean, these are $1 million cameras and they're great, but you would think that they would get the shot of like, I'm about to snap this girl's arm. I'm about to have the first ever victory by straight arm lock. That's what was playing in my mind. Like, I was like, man, it probably looks like people probably are like, oh, she's going to choke her. But I'm like, dude, her arm is going to snap in half. I have her arm. Like, I wish that they could see that. Like I don't know if they saw it or not. I actually haven't seen the full fight yet, but I had her in trouble in round one, and I.
All right, so that was the first attempt. So that was the other thing, the other technique. Again, the straight arm bar, not necessarily like she's even saying she wants it to be the first time it's ever done to win a MMA match. So showing that someone takes your back, it's definitely not the end all be all, and you can fight back even if someone is on your back. So you could be threatening them at the same time. And then here's the discussion about the neck crank, which they're calling a choke variation.
Actually in tight? Were you surprised that she tapped when she did?
Yeah, Rick and I have been working this choke for a while, and it was the same pretty much variation choke that I got with Sarah McMahon. It was absolutely tight, and she had no choice but to tap. People want to say that she quit. She didn't quit. She was getting choked. She had no choice but to tap. I would have broke her neck. So she tapped because she had no choice.
All right. So no choice would be more neck crank, more of a neck crank. Sometimes, if like again, so you'll have a little bit more time with the choke, even though you definitely don't have much time. So maybe, a few seconds before you pass out. But with regards to the potential of breaking necks and stuff, then that's neck crank. All right. Hala, how do you keep yourself young and injury free? I don't know. I eat a lot of vegetables and stretch and try to do the strength and conditioning stuff like the weights and all that. So that's how I try to keep myself injury free. I think those are the main things. So like kind of reducing inflammation in your body. So I'd eat a lot of vegetables and stretch and stuff, fruits and vegetables. All right. Okay. So I think Eli, the game hunter. So this shirt, Thanks for everyone talking about it. I'm actually wearing it because, well, I'm probably like a weakling or whatever, but it's pretty cold in California. It's probably not as cold as other parts of the world and even other parts of the United States, but it's pretty cold in LA. And actually, most of California, we got like this rainstorm that happened the other day, so it's still cold. Coldish for us, right? It's like below 70 degrees. So it's like we're freezing when it's below 70. So it's a long sleeve shirt. It says pro wrestling on it. It's from Snake Pit, Japan. One of my students actually trained with me, and then he went on a trip to Japan. He worked there also, so he spent time in Japan. So shout out to Kyle. He actually competed in our first event at UCLA. So he spent time in Japan, and he ended up training there at Snake Pit, Japan, while he was there, and he brought back this shirt. So thanks to Kyle, I have this shirt. Ripper Catch Wrestling. Hello, Ripper Catch Wrestling. So Ripper Catch Wrestling, Robbie, he actually hooked up where it was like maybe a couple months ago now, we had a live stream where we talk about Uma Fight Camp's YouTube channel and how they were talking about how catch wrestling would beat jiu-jitsu in a street fight. So thank you for setting that up, because they also, in their latest video, they kind of give a shout out back, and they have some really good points. They really raise some good points in their video with regards to like grappling as well, and how kind of like the business of grappling, and how jiu-jitsu tries to maintain their dominance, even by kind of trying to control, we say, like controlling the narrative, so controlling how people understand grappling. So anyway, so we get a shout out in that video, and it has a lot of great points. Eli, yeah, I like Uma Fight Camp. Watch all his videos. Yeah, he talks about how like, and this is the other thing too, like wrestling, say amateur wrestling in particular, tends to be available inexpensively for people of all classes, and so it's also in school, so it's virtually free. But he talks about like jiu-jitsu, where it's like extremely expensive in many places to train. So that is a problem, right? So it becomes kind of like an elitist type thing. All right, but that's I guess like a subject for another thing. Actually, we have a bunch of topics that I kind of want to bring up too. So a bunch of things are happening. So hopefully we can just keep the ball rolling on the live stream. So we definitely want to chat with you guys all about all these different topics, because I really appreciate everyone chatting and stuff, and I appreciate your questions and your points of view. Okay, Hala, how do you handle aggressive rollers? All right, and then Ripper Catch Wrestling replied, oil checks. Right, but no, a lot of times is you have to kind of shut them down. So a lot of times, like even gaining wrist control, using your pressure and stuff can help. So say like even if someone is really aggressive and all of a sudden they took your back, just like in the Nunes fight, you can be trying to fight back by, again, getting wrist control, getting the trying for that straight arm bar, these types of things. So like even if they're really aggressive and they've already taken so much, or they've taken so much advantage, right? Then it's like you can still be trying to slow down slow in that train, right? Eli, I agree. I know it was hard for me to train because growing up in the hood, I couldn't afford a lot of training. It is true. It's true. And so, yeah, like in Los Angeles, I mean, a lot of jiu-jitsu gyms are like hundreds of dollars, like per month. Jonathan Jimenez. Kind of funny. This whole training cost thing was was a problem even back then. Oh, I mean, seriously, I mean, yeah. So maybe that will be one of the subjects of our upcoming live streams, because apparently, yeah, you guys are talking about it. Jonathan Jimenez, back in the day in Brazil, people who couldn't afford the gi. Yeah, this is kind of one of the things. So, according to my understanding, and Jonathan points it out here, it's like luta libre. So that was their version of like no-gi. Basically, it's a catch wrestling inspired, but like nowadays, and even my buddy in Rio, who I've interviewed here, will confirm it's like modern day luta libre is far from catch wrestling. And kind of this thing that the point that I bring up again, where it's like, the catch wrestling might be the original version, but then people stray further and further away, and then the style again just morphs into another thing completely. So like freestyle, folk style, pro wrestling, all these different things. And so in this case of luta libre, same thing happened. But so that would, in Brazil, that was considered like the thing that the poor kids could do, right? As opposed to the more fancy schmancy people can afford to roll in gi and train in the official jiu-jitsu or whatever. That's kind of the way the story goes. Let me see. Eli says in New York City, jiu-jitsu is like $250 minimum. Wow, and that doesn't. So that's like and he says, and that doesn't count for other classes like Muay Thai, wrestling. So the other classes would be add-on classes. So you pay an additional fee. So that's intense. Robbie in the UK. So he says, UK is much cheaper than the USA. $200 a month is a ripoff. Jonathan Jimenez. Without the other classes, it's caca. Yeah, that should be like the all-inclusive fee, right? If that. Eli, training in Japan was awesome. It was so inexpensive, and I can train at a bunch of different gyms for the same price of one here stateside. Yeah, exactly. And it's unfortunate. So, martial arts, well, sports in general should be like for everybody, because everyone needs to stay fit. Everyone needs to move their bodies, right? So people should be doing these types of things, like even if it's not a sport, like stuff that's beneficial for our bodies, like weight training, or even like doing yoga or something. Some of these like gyms for even yoga are like really expensive, so pretty crazy. Shinhei, it is costly here in New Zealand. It is $40 a week, but New Zealand, they use like seashells and stuff for currency. No, I'm just kidding. So 40 seashells a week, I think I can handle that. I'll go. I like the beach is nearby here in LA. I'll go ahead and find some sand dollars. And no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, Shinhei. Do they got the internet? So apparently they have the internet down there. All right. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. All right. Yeah, so yeah, it's unfortunate, because these types of things, all sports in general, should be made, available to, everyone. Because, so like soccer is kind of one of these things where it's like soccer is such huge business that these scouts for these mega sports clubs, like in Europe, they scour like every village of every country for the next big talent, right? But soccer is something where it's like you just need a ball, right? And then to wrestling and all that. Wrestling, it should be where you don't necessarily even need shoes, or like it'd be cool if shoes, you can have shoes, but it seems like even wrestling shoes are getting expensive. So that's pretty nuts, right? So Eli, the game hunter, coming to LA for a week next month. Maybe I can come to Fight Science for some sessions. Yeah, just give me a shout out, or you go and send a message, especially on our Facebook page or Instagram. send a direct message, please. Ripper Catch Wrestling and the UK clubs are big too. Holla, where do you do private sessions? Well, at Fight Science, but you just have to do it when there's no class. So you just have to kind of go according to their schedule. All right. Actually, it's been an hour, so thank you everyone for watching. There, I'd take Catch Wrestling over BJJ. Catch doesn't have a boundary on submissions, and Catch have more submission arsenal. I agree, Shinhee. I agree 100%. I really enjoy. I mean, of course, this is a Catch Wrestling channel. I really love it. I also do jiu-jitsu and all that, and but again, my the main love is Catch Wrestling. So it helps me, even when I'm doing no gi and all that. So it helps me. It should help you, right? But then everyone's like saying oh, what was that, or what, and it helps you to think out of the box. Jonathan Jimenez, you must know your enemy to beat them. Holla, we missed you. Merry Christmas to all of you if we don't see you next week. Yeah, hopefully we can still do. Sorry, because here in the United States, this is like our holiday season. It kind of starts at the end of November and goes to the end of the year. So I kind of got caught up in some of that stuff, having to travel and stuff. So that was it. So, but yeah, hopefully we can at least keep the ball rolling, because we definitely have a lot of stuff to talk about. A lot of stuff's been happening, even in amateur wrestling, also even some self-defense stuff. So definitely want to talk about it, because some of our live streams that we've had in the past couple of months, we've been talking a little bit more about self-defense, and some big cases came up in the United States where self-defense was the main subject of these trials. And so I really think we should talk about it, because some of these decisions in the trials go along with some of the stuff I've been trying to tell people right on our live streams. So I'd kind of like to talk about it to kind of give people a better sense of like safe self-defense for yourself, where you don't risk getting in trouble yourself, right? Or you being put on trial and stuff. So I definitely want to talk about that. Holla, more self-defense stuff, please. Okay, you got it, because that's one of the things. Actually, that was going to be this live stream's topic, but the Nunes fight came up, and so a lot of people were talking about that. But then, so next one will be that self-defense thing, and then there's also another topic that came up with one of my favorite members of the USA freestyle team, talking about pay. So I want to talk about that too. Holla, that's extremely important. I agree. Yeah, having a realistic idea of self-defense, even in the United States, I think people kind of get an unrealistic view of self-defense, where people are like, I'm going to use my gun, and if anybody comes up to me, I'm going to murder them. And it's like, that's not a realistic. It's not so realistic, and you can get in a lot of trouble, even though we are. We have a gun-loving culture in the United States. Shinhei, double wrist lock, keep the double wrist lock. It's not Kimura, right? Yeah, exactly. It's like we had a name for it in English, and it also happens to be the same name for it in Chinese. I don't know what you call it in Japanese or whatever, but the Chinese characters are the same as double wrist lock. Yeah, Holla, you can get arrested for defending yourself. Yeah, so I definitely want to talk about it, because there's some really good example that just happened. It was a major case that just happened in the United States. So I want to show that. I want to show some of the footage and stuff. It's unfortunate, but yeah, I think it will really help give people a realistic idea of self-defense. All right. And not just guns. Holla. That's what Holla says. So not just guns. Yeah, exactly. So we'll definitely talk about that. So that'll probably be the next live stream. Okay, so thanks everyone for watching. So if you want to train and you're not around LA, or if you're not around my buddy John Strickland on the East Coast, or if you're not around Snake Pit Wigan, then consider joining the Catch Wrestling Alliance Academy. So that's on our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. Or if you just want to support us, you can join our YouTube channel. Go ahead and click on join. That's like the box, probably even underneath this video here. You can become a member. You can just support us at the minimum level, or if you do the medium level, then the mid tier, then you get access to all these videos, extra videos, presentations we've done, some behind the scenes rolling stuff. We also showed some alternative endings to some of the videos that we put out. Also, too, I'm going to be putting out some more seminar footage that I discovered on a hard drive. So it's actually really good quality. I guess apparently the person who was filming, was just testing out his camera. So there's a really good camera, and we have a lot of really cool clips from some seminars. So consider becoming a member of our YouTube channel. All right. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and then look forward to talking to everyone next time. And in the meantime, we're going to continue helping you to elevate your grappling, and together we will keep real wrestling alive.